good afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are. I think, what is it, morning here?
Morning.
Anyways, Skip's having some really big computer issues over there.
Yes. Maybe one of these days I'll pick up some tech skills, or maybe I'll find somebody who's got some. I don't know.
I was thinking we should change our intro to be more like a nightly news item. Like, this is Adam
Oh,
Walter speaking and Skip Ziegler reporting to you live from Houston and Lincoln, Nebraska.
there we go.
Anyways, today we're talking about customer red flags. We talk about personal red flags. When you identify people who say things, or they kick your dog, and you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
probably not the person I want to be hanging around with. But I have had a lot of stories of like flags I ignored because I just thought it'd be fine.
Mhm.
And I'm finding out Skip has had a blessed career, evidently,
Uh,
because he hasn't had as many, or maybe Skip is the red flag.
maybe so. Or maybe I've just blotted them out. Trying to preserve my sanity.
This,
There's
yeah,
there's some challenges out there.
this might make a good D&D episode for backups and bandwidths. For those of you who haven't been watching
Ah,
it, I do backups and bandwidths with a ninja, and I DM some of the events, and we do a real case scenario where the people have to solve the technical problem using
mhm.
D&D rules. Anyways, it should be one like spot the red flag.
Yep.
And just like have a scenario where they as an MSP are walking into somewhere where they should back out, and we're going to give them lots of opportunities to back out. This customer is not ever going to pay them. They're just trying to get as much free work out of them as they can.
Yeah, and that was, as was mentioned, I didn't do a lot of the new, new sales acquisition activities. I was more involved, after we got the client. But there would be clients that once we got them, it wasn't too long before we figured out, it's really not going to matter what we charge them. It's not going to be worth it. you
Yeah,
know,
how do you
and
figure
that's
that out though? Like, how do you find out like this client is not going to be worth any amount of money?
and I we didn't do well at that, and I don't really give us a hard time. And I would say us, the team, the company I'm working with, I don't give us a hard time because generally we're nice people and we wanted to help, and so we would put up with a lot that we shouldn't have put up with. But for my team, and I know there's one in particular that always stands out. It was a little company. They were actually in a really small town, about, I don't know, hour and a half's drive, maybe almost 2 hours away from us. And they were just mean, you know, and we should have picked up on that. When my team is kind of getting berated by staff members for whatever reason, we really need to jump on that. I think, there was an instance I had an employee that, I don't know, the words that they got from the customer were completely inappropriate. And, it kind of set off a different flag, and I jumped much more quickly on that one. It was like right away, we got executive teams involved. And I think when we hear some of those things that we move quickly on, we feel like we need to act, and we should. That's good. But there's other times when these are red flags that are going on, but they're not those kind of obvious, hey, I need to jump in here, and do something right away, sort of call to action. But I think we need to pay attention to those, because it
Yeah.
took way, way too many of those before my team and collectively we decided, this is not a good customer to keep.
Yeah, and I hear those I hear those stories, and I hear about MSPs that talk about when they get rid of the toxic customer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, they missed the paycheck, but they freed up so much time and so much stress that it's like, would you be willing to pay $5,000 a month to make your team more efficient and have a better quality workplace? Well,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, kill that contract.
Yep.
But you don't think about it that way. You're so busy thinking in terms of what's my RMM because I need to play with the big boys. I need to get to 5 million, and that'll take me $60,000 down. Like, you know what? That $60 down will come back.
Mm-hmm.
It will. Now, what do these red flags look like? For me, like I don't have as much MSP experience as the rest of you, but I do have a lot of consulting experience. And usually the consulting experience involves somebody is in a really bad situation. Adam does this on the side and he's really good. Can you just come in and clean up what happened? And so that might be why I saw a lot more red flag customers. Some of it was just
Mm.
a contractor or an MSP who did not know what they were doing. They had just gotten started, and one of them was they didn't do backups, or they're sorry, they didn't validate their backups,
Oh.
and the customer got crypto locked
Ooh.
on an admin account.
Yeah.
And so that was a cleanup scenario for me. And then there's other ones where like when early on in my career, when I first started moonlighting, I walked into a scenario I was telling Skip about earlier where, a friend of mine says, hey, my boss needs somebody to finish setting up this network. We have this new office space. We want to make sure that we can connect our computers and transfer files back and forth. I'm like, okay, I can help you with that. Like, do you have a server or anything? And I came in, did the usual site survey. And it looked like somebody had started connecting the network and didn't finish. Like the patch panel was there, it was screwed into the wall, but the patches were done kind of. And so I had to
No.
recrimp a bunch of things, and I went through and I tested with my cable tester and did the drops. And then the guy had just gotten a new computer, and I was like, that's cool. I was like, well, how can I use these two computers as one computer? And back then RDP wasn't quite stable. And so a lot of us use VNC. You just had to secure it properly.
Yep.
Change the default port and, do a couple just quick things and password it and you're fine. So I did that and I said, hey, what we can do is we can put VNC on this. Then you can remote it into it with this icon here. And we'll put it in your closet, your switch closet, and then you can access your old files and your old programs whenever you want. That way you never have to feel like you're, blah, blah. And so I do a good job, I get done, and I go home. And in my head, I'm playing this scenario where they had said something that day that tipped me off. The other guy, I was like, well, why didn't the guy finish the job? And he's like, well, no, he just never came back and picked up his check. I'm like, well, no one says no to money.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the guy had something sick. Maybe there was something that happened in his family. Maybe, I don't know. Anyways, he got in over his head and panicked. I million times, giving the customer the benefit of the doubt. Anyways, I get home, I go to bed, I wake up the next morning, and I get this call. It says, you hacked my computer. I know you did. I'm like, what? I had somebody come look at the computer, and they found all this stuff that you're hacking our computer. So I'm guessing like they brought in another technician.
Yeah.
And they saw VNC on this computer and thought, oh, well, that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. If I had saw VNC on somebody's brand new computer, I'd be like, you might be hacked.
Yep.
Without any context. And so in hindsight, what I should have done is like, can I talk to the other technician and just like explain what we did?
Yeah.
And nope. This guy was like, I need you to detail what you did and give it to me on a thumb drive. All my files back. I'm like, what files?
Yeah.
Like, so at the time I worked for the State Patrol, that was my main job as an analyst. And I went upstairs to IA and I'm like, okay, what should I do here? This guy's like threatening to like sue because I evidently hacked his computer. And they're like, document everything and keep it in a nice little file.
Yep.
And so I never got paid for that job. I joined the stack of the people that this guy was. Turns out, like my friend who worked for him, like this guy was a massive narcissist, like complete like Steve Jobs level, like lived in his own world. And yeah, just not a decent person. He was just milking people for their money, and then he had some severe paranoia, or he just milked people for their jobs and then knew how to like get out of paying a paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah. That becomes a skill set for some people.
But I
But I
should
think,
have noticed when I walked in that, hey, this job's half done. They didn't pick up their paycheck. Had them read the red flags. But I
hmm
was so excited to have the job. It was great side money. I was able to use that money to help pay. I think it was before I was married, so it's helping pay for the wedding.
yeah,
I'm just excited to take whatever job I can. And I ignored the red flags because I wanted the money. And this happens a lot in the MSP industry. I read stories all the time on the forums and stuff where people are like, I bid out this job and the cables were cut. I would have to repatch all the cables. I had to retest it, make sure everything's okay. And the customer laughed at the price. And I'm like,
yeah,
well, your first red flag should have been all those connectors
yes,
were
all those
cut.
cut cables.
I mean, how hard is it to unplug an RJ45 from your switch?
Yes.
The fact that they cut means somebody was angry.
And asking those questions and getting that information, sometimes it is kind of hard, but with new clients, thinking on a couple of different sides of the fence here, I know there's a, we weren't even called MSPs back then, but it wasn't a PC store, right? We were kind of in that growing evolutionary phase. And when I left there, I was the longest term employee that they'd ever had.
Okay.
And that was at 3 years and 2 months.
Okay.
This company had been in business for over a decade. So, you know, I and I knew for quite a while before I left that that was not the place for me to be. You know, I was looking for the right opportunity. I had great opportunities there. I mean, I was doing stuff that I couldn't do anywhere else or hadn't found a place. So I endured a lot. But when when you work with a customer and their turnover rate is really high, that's probably a really good flag to be aware of. When
Yes.
internally they can't keep staff around, what's going on, and if that's going to be a challenge keeping internal staff, then keeping you as an MSP, which is essentially just external staff, is going to be equally challenging. So, there are definitely going to be opportunities you look at those and go, yeah, it seems like a good idea, but the stress and the increased workload and the complexity that come with those, it eats up all of your margin, and it's actually a customer that costs you money rather than makes you any money.
Yeah.
So that the amount of that check doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and well, we see the bottom line there, and we get so hungry. Like, for me with that toxic guy, I should have seen it, but I saw the money for it. I'm like, this is like half my honeymoon right here, right? This is good work, and we're willing to give people a lot of slack and get into abusive situations because we want the cash. And you got to have almost an onboarding checklist or a pre-agreement checklist where you have, does the customer have long-term employees? Does the customer have a positive relationship with their previous IT administrator? Because let's be clear here. They have a previous IT administrator. Everybody does at this point.
Yeah.
No one is coming in with no IT experience. It's either they had somebody moonlighting, they had a friend of a friend, they had an MSP who went out of business. Something happened, and
Yeah.
you're in. Get that story. What happened to my predecessor? And I got to the point in my corporate career where I started asking that question because I started coming across toxic environments. Like, now, Adam Walter's not like a perfect employee, but when you bounce to jobs like I did, like work on a job, right into the sunset, work on a job, right into the sunset.
Right.
And eventually you start getting hired and look for full-time positions. And the only jobs open are ones where the previous person left in not a good situation.
hmm
And so you're coming into this world and like, was the problem the manager? Was it the environment? Was it the job itself not defined well? What is the problem?
Right.
And so when you're stepping into a vacancy, then ask them what happened to the previous person. If it's a new job, like say, or in your case as an MSP, a new company, look at them and get their company their company story. What's putting them in
Yeah.
business? Are they forming this business because they couldn't stand the previous company they worked for and they wanted to do it right? Okay, that is a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
Is it because the previous company was bad, or was it because this employee doesn't work well with others?
Yeah.
And so you got to answer those questions, because otherwise you're going to end up in a toxic situation. Like, there are MSPs out there who have formed because they couldn't work with an existing MSP. They were that guy or girl who just could not get along with the
Mm-hmm.
MSP. They wanted to do things their way, and they wouldn't observe SOPs or anything like that, and just wanted to like just work. So they formed their own MSP, and then they burn out really quick because you need SOPs.
Yeah.
You need to
Yeah.
have this stuff to grow, or you just become a trunk slammer who's working job to job to job.
Yeah.
And so you got to look for those things, like, why did this company get formed?
Yeah.
Where did it come from?
Yeah, and I think that asking that question early on, it doesn't have to be an interrogation kind of deal.
No.
It can work really well into understanding their business goals, their needs, everything that we talk about generally. You know, getting to know that business. What are they really trying to do? What are their challenges? Digging in on that. If it's a company that you decide you do want to continue working with, all of that information that you're acquiring is going to dramatically help you align technology solutions to meet their goals.
Yep.
All right. So it's really good stuff. But along the way, if you're doing that and you get all these red flags, then that's going to be, your information to align your goals to meet, up with your bank account. And so you
Yeah.
don't do, we don't do any business with that one. So it helps you out both ways. There's no negative from doing that, that investigation or just that awareness checking to see where things are at.
I would challenge you to look for your best clients. Sit down with your team. If you have not done this exercise yet with a consultant or a coaching practice, sit down and identify your best clients and say, how do we get more of these? What makes them our great client? Well, they're really good at talking to us. Susan over here has beers with Alice from that office every Friday. And it just kind of, you go down the list, like make a list, even if it's little things, little nuanced things, like the things that like they're really understanding when a ticket can't get handled right away or there's an emergency. Okay, make a list of those. Now, why does the business behave that way?
Mm-hmm.
What is it in their culture that they like? And it could be that you just align really well with medical practices, and then go see our niche podcast we did earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can make that checklist of what's positive, you can start looking for that in other lookalike customers.
Mm-hmm.
And start filling your entire business with these customers that you really enjoy doing business with. And I think that is a key way. So like when I look for like, what are my favorite jobs I've ever worked? And there were always jobs where the IT group was close knit. I really liked that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we were able to hand things off to each other. Yeah, we would bicker here and there, and we'd get irritated with each other, but it was almost like a little miniature like family.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had each other's backs, and if somebody was gone or got sick or was out of office, they covered the other person. Even if they weren't great at their job, they would still cover it. And that was a great synergy. So how do you find those environments? Well, we got to find other teams that have been working well together for a long time, and maybe this position's a new hire.
Yeah.
And so you start looking for
growing.
jobs similar to the ones that you've enjoyed in the past. Why didn't I stay at that first job? I had nowhere to go. There's only so long you can stay at an analyst level, and
Yeah.
and so long you can take a $35,000 salary and call it good.
Yeah, I've been there.
I did, because they're like, this is a pretty good life. Why not just stay here? And then I thought, Adam, you would never be happy long term here.
Yeah.
At this level. Even like the CIO position there was too small.
Mm-hmm.
And so my ego got in my way. Young technician ego, right?
Yep.
And so I, kind of moved on. But I still look back on those days with fondness. Like that was a good time in Adam's career. I moved on to another close-knit small company, and I really enjoyed my time there. And I should have like leaned into that, but then I got a big corporate job and it paid so damn well.
Yeah.
And that's where I started learning this idea, like you're willing to give up pieces of yourself for really good money. And
Good to sound
the
how
money just
much.
kept getting better as I kept going to different corporations. But then in hindsight, I'm looking back, the the environments kept getting more toxic. So, um,
Yep.
when I finally got to my breaking point, I was just like, my wife's like, why don't you just form your own company and go back to small business? That's where you were happy. I'm like, okay. And so I did. That's how we got Virtual C and Humanize IT. And that kind of leans back into customer red flags. Like in my career, I kept getting better and better money. In MSPs, you keep getting better and better money from these people who need to pay more because no one
Mhm.
else will touch them.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you also have to think that's not always the case. That's an exaggeration, but you're getting money from this customer and you're willing to put up with a lot because they're giving you a lot of money. And I've heard different strategies for getting out of that scenario. My favorite one, I wish I could give credit to them. They're like, people are like, well, what do you do with toxic employees? There's a conversation at a conference. And everybody's like, you send them notice. Everybody's like, send them notice. And this one guy raises his hand and goes, just raise their rates.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they keep
There you go.
raising them
Mm-hmm.
until the customer quits.
Yep. And make it
And that way it
worth your
forces
while. I mean, it may
them
take a
to look
lot.
for an exit strategy. And it's not
Yeah.
my fault. I'm just expensive.
Yeah. There you go.
You don't have to charge all your customers the same rate. You're a private company, people, unless you've got some weird state like Texas where they force everybody to be fair.
No.
Nebraska and Texas, like, are very similar in this. Like, you can charge whatever you want. It just might not get any business.
Yeah.
If you charge this company more because they are a needier customer, up their rates. If your standard rate's $200 a seat, make it $300.
Yeah.
And the strategy there is if you only increase it by 20%, most people don't notice.
Yeah.
People never notice below 20%. That's why everybody thinks that they deserve 20% more on their salary. Whenever you think about what raise you want, I want this much. Like, it's about 20%.
Yeah.
The human mind works in different rules, and this is one of them. So just raise your rates. If you want them to notice, raise it by 30%.
There you go.
Give them a shot across the bow and be like, why are our rates going up? There's been a lot more work. Your environment's a lot more complex, and we're increasing rates this year so that we can accommodate and make sure we have the right people in place. Next year, rates go up. Why are rates going up again? Well, your environment's pretty complex, and we've had a lot of calls and outages, and we're adjusting based upon the needs of your customers. And like, well, we're going to find somebody else. All right, just let us know when you do. We'll help transition you out. We hate to see you go.
Yeah.
But think about that. You just got rid of toxic customers and made a huge profit. I was like, that is deviously creative.
That is really good because, there's a rate, I guess, in an extent that some of them, it is going to be worthwhile. They can pay enough that, it will be worth your time. So working towards that, but at the same time, offboarding those ones where it's not worth it, you're not really losing that money. And I know it's kind of hard to really get behind that sometimes when you're feeling the cash pressure. But when that money goes away, it allows you to do other things. And most of the time, the other things that you find to do are so much more profitable. They're so much better. So you really have to lean into that. I mean, don't fall into yet another one of those customers because you're desperate. Lean into what you were talking about earlier. Why are we working with these good customers? What makes it great? Lean into those. And that is a really good way to, prune your business so that it grows in the right directions.
Yeah. Yeah. Prune your business. I like that idea. So customer red flags. This has been a good conversation. I have a lot of stories. Skip has less because he's had a blessed career. Maybe Humanize IT is his red flag. But anyways,
Oh,
the concept here is that find a list of what you think a great customer is, and try to put some red flags out there and educate your staff on if you see things like cut lines, if you see things like incomplete work, if you see and hear comments from staff like short-term employees are a problem,
mm-hmm.
just let us know so we can say, you know what, this contract's not for us. I don't want to put my employees through that. Or, hey, I know this other customer has a great staff. It looks a lot like this other customer we really like. Let's try to get them.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so you can, over time, this is a slow play. This is a 5-year thing where over 5 years, your business will keep getting better and better and better, and you'll get happier and happier and happier, and your margins will keep getting bigger.
Yep.
And it takes time, but you just craft it and you'll get there. Watch out for the red flags and you'll be good.
There you go.
Thanks for coming on, Skip, and we'll see everyone next week.
See ya.